Okay, we are live. Let's see here. Just make sure that we're okay. We got 8 people. So super excited about this session. We are here with Leo Winegar, the founder of Uplift Community of Faith. Very impressive man. Spent his life dedicated to serving people and helping them come closer to Christ. And this session, I know a lot of you have waited for the session. Super looking forward to it. Is how to maintain a spirit of love and peace while interacting with those who criticize. And this is a big topic. I know that as I've engaged on digital missionary work, and I've gone online to many groups and shared my my beliefs and helped people come closer to Christ, you will quickly realize that there's people that go on there and start wanting to contradict and criticize and do things that you never thought were possible to do in words against you, and that could become really tough. So we are here with Leo to talk about this topic and how to help them feel the spirit of love. So Leo, we're glad to have you.
Nice to be here.
And what we did, we started bringing out the example of, let's talk about missionaries. And in the previous session, we talked about a missionary who creates a page and they start going out in groups. And they will quickly realize that if they go out to a group that is focused on Christ and they start posting the Book of Mormon, right? I love this book. Here it is. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden you get tons of people. And, you know, I'd love to say that they love it and they say, I want to read it. But you get a lot of people that go in there and, you know, start criticizing you and saying bad things about you. So what advice would you have for that missionary who just did that? And we're going to bring it, you know, we're going to talk about many different subjects here, but what advice would you have for them if, you know, they post this and maybe they get 90 likes and, you know, 50 negative comments? How do they deal with this, right? How do they deal with that post? How do they deal with their future posts? What would you suggest to them?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in just a few minutes, but I would say the first step is to realize that your audience is not just the person that you're talking to, right? So if you're in public, the person that's criticizing you or criticizing the Book of Mormon or just, you know, the church or whatever, those people are not really the person. You can talk to that person, of course, and you should be talking to that person, but realize that your audience is much bigger than that. So it's everybody else that's going to see that, what you're writing in the moment, and then also it's on the internet, so it's not going anywhere. And so you may be screenshotted, you may be, you know, it may be passed along. You're going to have people reading what you write for years, maybe, you know, for years to come. So just realizing that your audience, who your audience is, it's often not the person you're trying to minister to in that moment as much as people that are actually reading what you're writing in public. If it's just you and that person and you're in a private space, that's different. But if it's a public space, remember that everybody's watching and we need to be on the up and up. And I know that missionaries are trained to do that, so that's just a reminder. The biggest thing for me when I'm interacting with somebody on the internet that's critical is to think about them as like being right there with you in that space. Like if you were to like next door neighbor test or going out to dinner tests, going out to lunch test with that person, if that person who's just so angry and so rude is, you know, if you were to imagine sitting across from that person and looking them in the eyes and saying, you know, how's your family doing? You know, you mow your lawn yesterday, how'd that go? You know, so you gotta remember that these are children of God, that our Heavenly Father, He loves them very much. And so we have to remember that even though they're being so rude to us, we have to remember to do that. So that's the first couple things to think about.
Now, do you respond to them or do you kind of just leave it, let it go? Because my experience is they're not going to change their mind, right? So they're just out to kind of go after you. What was been your best tactic?
Yeah, the question that I've learned how to ask myself is it working for you? And over the years, I've been doing what's called apologetics, right, which is online defense of the church for many years. And I've initially, when I started getting involved, I was a very what we call a traditional apologist, which is kind of like arguing, you know, trying to defend and go back and forth debating with people online, and it was a little sarcastic when I got upset. I was sarcastic with people, and just that approach just does not work. I've had like one person when I was in that stage of apologetics, battling people on YouTube and other places on the internet, that one person said, you know what, you've changed my mind. But it was like thousands of people probably that I talked to, interacted with. And there was one lady who said, you changed my mind. And I was like, yes, but all the rest of the people maybe that I wasn't being patient with or being kind of sarcastic with, no one else ever said, hey, Leah, you helped me. So I learned, and it wasn't like that. I didn't like damage people, but I just wasn't like the more compassionate, what's called pastoral approach to online interaction, which is you're ministering to people, which is you openly express love for that person, care for that person. Through text is really important. You use smiley faces. You need to use, kind words. Say thank you for commenting. Even if they're just yelling at you, you can say, thanks for being here, and I care about you. I want to hear what you have to say. And so if you have, you also need to have the knowledge to be able to talk to people that are criticizing. So a lot of the people, they study the history of the church, contemporary, current issues in the church, much more than you and I. There's people who leave the church who know church history better than you and I. So if you're going to interact with somebody, if you don't have the knowledge to be able to interact and kind of go back and forth with them on the topic and express love confidently and be able to back up what you're saying with, good research articles, like you're going online and you're able to find actual articles that back up what you're going to say, you got to just kind of express love and share a simple testimony and let it go. But if you have the time and you have the ability, the knowledge to go back and forth with somebody, you can express love and have it be, share your light in a way that the rest of the people that are watching can feel that there's something special about what you're saying, and that you're taking the higher road, and that's a powerful place to be. So.
No, I love that feedback, and I think you said some words here, and I want to get into some of the meat and potatoes that you are so good at. But also, when you're engaging in these communities, it's probably we use the word ministering. It's not about promoting your message. And when you go into a Christian community with different faiths, if you go in there with the wrong message, it could bring up a whole bunch of these people. But picking the message and ministering makes a big difference. I'd love to get your thoughts there of how to make sure you're using the right message to the right audience versus one that's going to create contention. Yeah.
Triumphalism, in the church where we are proclaiming like with the trumpet, the gospel, that works in some circumstances. And I've shared my testimony in that in certain places, like on my mission, there were times when I felt like I was sounding a trumpet. But I think better to try to adopt a mindset of gentle, meek, mild, calm, humble approach to sharing the gospel. We have some difficult things to share with people. The great apostasy is one. It's aimed at tearing down what some people consider to be sacred or cherished. Their cherished beliefs and the continuation of the total full package of Christianity for thousands of years, and that nothing's been lost. And so when we're sharing these, if we're sharing difficult things for people, even more so, we need to be very, very gentle, very humble, very meek, very kind and loving in our approach with missionary work. It's some of the things we can share a little more confidently with a strong smile, but other things we need to be more gentle about. So that's kind of, I think, so the audience, if you've got control over your group, hopefully you're in a place where you've got some control. If it's out in the open internet, then even more so, you've got to be ready to work with these people and to care about them, even though they're not being caring about you. But if you have control over the audience, like you're managing your group and you have people that you're vetting to allow them to come in, that's great. If it's a public page, though, you've got to be ready, and you're going to have people that are listing out criticisms, difficult accusations that are difficult to deal with. against you and against the church. And so, you know, it may be just good to, you can refer them to people like Fair Mormon. You can ask them if they'd like to email the people at Fair Mormon. They're great people over there. They provide answers that's backed in research. That they try to provide answers that are solid, good answers about, you know, to answer those accusations. So you can reach out to them. You can refer them to Uplift Community of Faith. That's where we work, answering the difficult questions people have and trying to resolve those concerns. There's a lot of different resources that are great places. Book of Mormon Central is one. You can send people there. And then as you're studying these things and your knowledge increases, you may be able to share a few things that you've learned, some good answers to these things. But otherwise, it's best to maybe just say, I don't know, and just to express love, and then say, you know what, we can't really talk about this because I don't understand it, but I refer you to these places that are good places. So.
Yeah, and we had the encounter, like, this is great feedback. I remember, and you met this person because it happened with me. I started posting. I didn't openly post about doctrine and the Book of Mormon, but I started teaching them the principles on gospel principles. So about Heavenly Father's plan and the plan of salvation. And I started posting those little by little every day. And one person reached out to me and said, "Oh my goodness, I cannot wait for you to get this book out, the Gospel Principles book, because it's so true." And it happened to be I was posting about prophets because I think that's the third or fourth. And he said, "Steve, are you a prophet?" And I said, "No, I'm not a prophet." But he wanted to find out more. And then, you know, I went from comment, which was, and it was very soft teachings, to talking to him on Messenger. And once we started talking on Messenger and I was teaching him more, you know, he started eating it up. And he loved the plan of salvation. The missionaries came to meet with them. He started reading the Book of Mormon, started looking at the Bible. And then all of a sudden, he started talking to his neighbor. Mm-hmm. We started to inundate him with all of these things, negatives, right? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, he was, what I call it, he was having a faith crisis early on, since he was, "Oh, I love what you're teaching. I feel a spirit. I believe it. Oh my goodness, I don't believe it anymore." Right? So how do you deal with people? And it happens, you know, before they join the church, during the church, you know, their membership of the church, after they leave. Or how do you help these people who have now, you know, tasted the fruit, but then have had, the people up in the hill, you know, show them the other world, and that they might be, you know, interested in following. How do you deal with that, right? Because I think that's the topic. And how do you help them feel a spirit?
One of the terms I think we need to get away from, just to start off, is the term anti-Mormon. Okay, so we're not Mormons anyway, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a misnomer in the first place. So let's drop that term. Okay, let's drop the terms like apostates if we can, unless it's a technical use, like you're in a meeting and you're talking about someone's apostatizing from the church. But labels are difficult, right? We don't want to try to label people. You don't want to be labeled unless you self-identify as, I'm a Latter-day Saint, but you don't want someone saying, you know, tearing you down and saying, "No, you're just a Mormon," you know, and you don't want to be called a Mormon anymore. So we want to make sure we're being careful on labels and being gentle. But so people that are struggling, like if you just type in to Google LDS, okay, and YouTube comes up, you're going to find the top 10 problems with the LDS church, okay? And you're going to have people, you know, so anybody that's listening to this, I'm sure you've done this, or you know someone that's done this, hopefully, and has seen all of the stuff that comes up. And this is what we used to call anti-Mormon stuff, you know, literature, right? So in the old days, like God Makers, right? This is old video, like in the 70s or whatever, that was really poorly researched and just terrible attack, but it was difficult for people to deal with. But you had to like seek it out. You had to like rent it or borrow it from somebody. You had to like secretly take it to your basement and put it in the VHS player and make sure no one else is watching it. And but today, I mean, the internet has just blasted the whole concept of seeking out anti-Mormon literature. So I would say, instead of calling it anti-Mormon, I'd say we'd call it maybe material that is critical of the church, or different interpretation. Because the people that have this mindset and they don't believe the truth claims of the church, our doctrines, our core doctrines, our practices, they are very sincere and authentic and genuine in their interpretation of the data, right? Of the research, of the evidence, of history. And a lot of people who leave the church, we need to realize this, is that a lot of them feel like they are on the right path, right? They feel like they genuinely believe that they are trying to help other people from experiencing pain and heartache that they experienced, right? And so you have people that are investigating the church. And if you're going to buy a house, for example, right, what are you going to do? You're going to talk to people, maybe the neighbors, and say, hey, is the neighborhood good? You know,
Yeah.
You research the school. You're going to go to try to go some neutral, or buying a car. You're going to look at the Kelley Blue Book. You're going to try to research and find some independent, neutral information, unbiased information, and you're trying to balance out your research, right? It's a big decision. If you're making a decision, you're basically signing your life away, your eternal life away with this church to make covenants that are eternal covenants. Anybody that's a smart person is going to try to research, right? And so you got to realize they're going to go and they're going to see videos. They're going to see, and this is for, our kids. Once we have kids, missionaries are watching this. You're going to have kids one day. Your kids are going to you're going to learn about this stuff. And so we've got to be studying, be open-minded, and keep God at our side as we're studying these things, and realize that people that find critical information online about the church, and they've made decisions against the church, they are very genuine and very sincere, and they just interpret the information differently. So we have to realize that most people are just trying to do the best they can. Okay, that's really important. And that we can care about people that way and say, I know that you've studied this and you've come to a different conclusion. I wish you wouldn't, but I'm here for you. But I understand why. I understand why you've done that. And so we can show compassion and patience with these people, because it is difficult for some people. I almost left the church. I had a faith crisis, and I understand how difficult that is. And I think it's just something we need to be patient and kind with people who are different, have a different path, a different journey. So
that's good feedback. And like, for one lesson I learned, tell me what this is, from this experience with this person, because the feedback that was given to him was so negative that he says, I'm out. But I learned that if online, it's a little different than in person, because online, that relationship, I'm still friends with people that I've been sharing the gospel with for 4 years. Right? This has been the 4-year journey. But as you're doing that, sometimes because you finally have someone interested, and that doesn't happen often, usually offline, right? So you just want to rush it. So you rush the gospel teaching so fast, but you don't realize what you just said is, because you've rushed it, they start doing their research even stronger. And when they do the research, they don't have a strong foundation to build on, so then it crumbles. So how important is it to build that strong friendship relationship and the strong relationship of trust, so when the crisis comes, you're there to support? Talk about that a little bit. What is it important, and what have you found? Well,
if you go, and again, we're just relating this to sales. I know it's terrible, but it's the thing that's closest to missionary work. It's in the secular world, right? Is sales. So if you go to a salesperson and you say, "Tell me about this car," and he's like, "Well, I want to be upfront with you and tell you about a couple things that we've noticed, but they're not. We've been able to figure out ways to deal with these problems with the car, and this is how you can handle this. There's a little airflow issue here, but this is how." So he's being proactive and upfront and transparent about some of the challenging things. Oh man, if we, as the elders and sisters, probably need to not go into these more difficult topics on on their lessons. Their lessons should be basic, right? But bring a member. Talk to your ward, talk to the bishop, say, are there any members in the ward who study church history? Okay, that would be the first thing I'd do as a missionary if I were to go serve today, is to talk to the bishop, the ward council, and say, are there any members in this ward who study church history or the current issues of the church? Like, read the news, are up to date, maybe go on Reddit and read what people are saying. You may have a couple people in their aces up your sleeve, right? And I would make dang sure that I know those people, And then I express my need for them and my want for them to be involved in missionary lessons. And I would try to bring them on the difficult lessons. I would bring them along and say, hey, brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so, they have studied church history. And you may find something online that it's different, than what we teach. And you want to know about what they're saying, why they're saying it, and be upfront with them and say, there's some challenging things out there. And you're going to probably see that if you do some research. So anyway, I just feel like that's probably a good thing to just open the door and say, we want to talk about these things. As a missionary, I don't talk about them because I teach the basics, and that's okay. But have someone there with you in the ward or in the group that you're setting up. Make sure you have someone in the group who can be that go-to guy or go-to lady, sister, whatever. Have them be ready to answer these questions and to be that ministering, loving friend who has the confidence, has the ability to answer these difficult accusations.
No, I like that, because if you can focus on building a strong relationship with them, of helping them progress in Christ at their level, that could take months, right? Or it could take weeks, and they trust you. Then when they encounter those hard questions, and like you said, if they don't have someone there, I mean, if they don't feel like they can do that well, bring someone else in. And I think you have a group called Uplift where there's tell me a little bit about Uplift. There are people there you have a group that's just there designed to help people with faith crises, right?
Yeah, investigators and also just people that have gone through a faith crisis or starting to question or doubt the truth claims of the church, the core doctrines, the things that we teach in church. So there's people who go, 20, 30 years, even sometimes more, as members of the church, and all of a sudden they read something online or watch something online, and all of a sudden they question everything, right? It's an identity crisis, it's an existential crisis, and these people sometimes need help, and they often do. And I did when I went through my faith crisis. So yes, Uplift, you can send people our way. You can even have them email me if you like. That's fine. Leo, my email address is leowiniger@gmail.com. I give that out freely. And I'm happy to call people on the phone and talk to, a lot of people. I don't know.
Well, and I think what you said also before everybody inundates you is build that strength in your ward. Find out who in your ward you could bring in, because that's a great. And plus, if you don't have that strength, start studying yourself or ask people to be ready for that and know who to go to.
At least read the gospel topics essays that are on the church's website. At least those things. And I know a lot of institute classes, they're talking about these topics now. Book of Mormon translation, the Book of Abraham, all kinds of things that are just more difficult, complex issues in our church history, and we need to be aware of what these are, at least at a high level, and then know where to go to answer those questions. Know where the resources are, and refer people to those resources openly, and not hide things, and not say, well, or try to answer it and not really know. That's one of the challenges I think we do as missionaries, elders and sisters. If you don't know and you're just doing your best to just answer things, just be careful, because these people might even be recording what you say. People post missionary lessons online and ridicule missionaries, and I've seen this happen. And it's just good to be as honest and transparent and humble about these things as you can be. And if you have a group and you're trying to answer these questions and you don't know, just say, I don't know, and then refer the person or bring somebody in, and then that's a good way to step forward.
No, I love that, and I think it's kind of like if you're buying something very expensive and you're talking to a salesperson who doesn't know anything about anything, you're going to say, hey, can you get me someone else? Because I'm not going to make this purchase without somebody telling me everything. But before that, you're going to do all your research. So as from a digital missionary perspective, we just have to be ready that people will do the research, and they want to talk to the person who knows a lot as well. And I look at my dad, he spent a year and he read all the gospel books he could. He read the Book of Mormon. He talked to multiple preachers about the gospel, and it took him a while because he really wanted to study it before he made a commitment for life.
Yeah.
And that's what we're kind of asking them to do. So we just have to be ready to give them the best experience joining the church and the best information. Right. And that's what you're saying is okay, we're here. Let's make it a super experience and teach them the principles. So when they join, we taught them how to research right and where to look up information. And
yeah,
um,
there are some amazing converts out there, guys, that have had this experience. They've studied all the anti-Mormon, for lack of a better term, information, and they come into the church and they've experienced it all. They read all these all these articles, these letters that are online, and they know what the accusations are, and they know the answers, and they're awesome converts. And so don't be afraid of telling people, hey, if you study this stuff, just so you know, there are answers out there, and I don't know them all, but there are answers, and I'll refer you to Fair Mormon, Book of Mormon Central, Uplift, Community of Faith, any of these places online, or there's somebody in my ward, I'll grab them and bring them over, and you guys can talk about it, talk on the phone, become friends. You know, there's lots of ways to handle this. And that's like, it's like 50% of missionary work. I just can't say that enough. 50% is the gospel basics, right? The lessons. The other 50% or more is personal online research. These people aren't just in a box, in a silo, you know, huddled away from the internet, just listening to you as missionaries. They are going to be researching. They want to know both sides of the story. And so the more upfront we can be and say, I know that there's stuff that you might be studying, you might hear about, and be ready to answer those questions with some kind of resource is so important. So
I love it. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for participating. And we will be ready for the next session. But thanks, Leo.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye.
Bye.